Have you ever felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to retreat from the world, not out of depression, but from a profound exhaustion of pretending? Modern society quickly labels the desire for solitude as isolation or social failure. Yet, through the lens of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, this intense need for quiet isn't a sign that you are losing your way, but rather a crucial signal that your unconscious mind is demanding to be heard. Jung observed that true self-realization requires us to face the shadow, the hidden, unintegrated aspects of our personality that we hide behind our social masks. When you find yourself pulling away from superficial conversations and forced interactions, it is often because your psyche is rejecting the falsehoods you once used to fit in. This sacred solitude creates the necessary sanctuary to confront your rawest truths, process buried emotions, and shed the burden of living for others' approval. Ultimately, choosing solitude is not an escape from reality, but a courageous step toward wholeness and shadow integration. As your old connections shift and the noise of the outside world fades, you are given the rare opportunity to transform lonely isolation into a deeply empowering sanctuary. Recognizing these 6 subtle signs will help you realize that your distance isn't breakdown, but the ultimate awakening of your true, authentic self. To understand why your sudden need for solitude might actually be a sign of shadow integration, you must first examine the concept of the persona. Carl Jung defined the persona as the social mask we wear to navigate society, fit into our communities, and protect ourselves from rejection. From early childhood, you are taught to project a polite, agreeable, and competent image to the world, slowly hiding away any trait that might provoke disapproval. Over time, this artificial presentation becomes so convincing that you forget where the mask ends and where your true identity actually begins. The shadow, by contrast, consists of every raw emotion, unacceptable desire, and repressed instinct that your persona forced you to hide. It is the hidden dark room of your psyche, holding the anger you were never allowed to express, the selfishness you felt guilty for, and the unconventional truths you buried to keep the peace. While you are young and eager to build a status in the world, maintaining this division feels easy and even necessary. You happily trade authenticity for acceptance, believing that your worth depends entirely on how well you play your assigned social role. However, as you mature, the energy required to sustain this illusion begins to drain your vital force. The friction between who you truly are and the character you play in public creates an invisible, constant psychological tension. You start returning home from casual gatherings feeling strangely hollow, as if you spent hours performing on a stage for an audience that doesn't even know the real actor. This is the moment the shadow begins to rebel, refusing to stay locked in the basement of your mind any longer. The first clear sign that your shadow is demanding integration is an unbearable exhaustion of superficial interactions. Small talk about the weather, polite laughter at jokes you don't find funny, and empty gossip suddenly feel like heavy physical labor. You begin to notice every subtle lie you tell just to keep a conversation smooth, and each artificial nod leaves behind a bitter taste of self-betrayal. What used to be easy social lubricant now feels like an intolerable waste of your limited time and consciousness. This profound exhaustion is not a symptom of clinical depression or sudden antisocial bitterness, even though people around you may misinterpret it that way. Instead, it is your psyche's natural defense mechanism kicking in to stop the leak of your vital energy. Your internal system is telling you that the cost of maintaining a fake identity has finally exceeded the benefits of social approval. The mind instinctively pulls its attention inward, cutting off supply to the persona, so it can redirect that energy toward deep internal healing. When you feel this sudden urge to withdraw into solitude, you are experiencing the collapse of the false self. The structures you built to keep everyone else comfortable are no longer strong enough to hold the weight of your emerging truth. It can feel terrifying at first because your identity has been tied to your social roles for so long that stepping away feels like disappearing entirely. Yet, Carl Jung reminded us that no tree can grow. Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. To heaven, unless its roots reach down to hell. You must let the old mask shatter if you want to discover what lies beneath it. In the quiet sanctuary of solitude, the loud demands of the outside world slowly fade away, creating space for buried thoughts to surface. Without an audience to perform for, you are forced to sit alone with the parts of yourself you spent decades ignoring. The silence can feel uncomfortable initially, as repressed anger, old grief, and unfulfilled desires begin to float to the top of your awareness. But this discomfort is a necessary cleansing process, signaling that the barrier between your conscious mind and your shadow is finally breaking down. As you spend more time alone, you begin to observe your interactions from a detached, objective perspective. You start to see clearly how many of your daily habits were driven by a desperate need to be liked, validated, or safe. You recognize that your past eagerness to please everyone was actually a form of cowardice, a way of bribing the world so it would never look too closely at your flaws. Seeing this truth clearly is painful, but it is the essential first step toward genuine personal freedom. Integrating the shadow does not mean becoming a dark or harmful person. It means becoming a complete one. The anger you suppressed contains the raw energy you need to set firm boundaries, and the selfishness you feared holds the key to self-respect. When you embrace these neglected aspects of your personality, you no longer need to pretend to be a helpless saint. You realize that true goodness is not the absence of dark impulses, but the conscious choice to control them, rather than letting them run your life in secret. This internal shift naturally transforms how you navigate your daily environment and relationships. You find yourself speaking less but with far greater clarity and intention when you do choose to open your mouth. You lose the urge to explain your choices to people who aren't interested in understanding you, and you stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. The desperate need to be understood by everyone is replaced by a quiet, unshakable loyalty to your own inner truth. Eventually, you realize that the solitude you sought was never about hating humanity or running away from reality. It was an essential pit stop on the journey of individuation, a sacred space where you could gather the scattered pieces of your true self and weave them back together. You step back into the world not as a performer seeking applause, but as a grounded individual who no longer needs a mask to feel safe. The silence gave you back your power, converting your isolated loneliness into a rich, permanent inner strength. By honoring your need to step away from the crowd, you take the first real step toward living an authentic life. You prove to yourself that you value your own internal integrity more than the temporary comfort of fitting in with the crowd. The falling of the mask is not the end of your social life, but the birth of your true presence. As Carl Jung famously observed, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. As you pull back from the performative dance of the persona, a second and far more painful wave of transformation begins, the collapse of relationships built on your false self. For years, your social circle was held together by an unspoken agreement. You played a specific, predictable role, the reliable caretaker, the agreeable listener, or the endlessly accommodating friend, and in return, others gave you connection and validation. But when you stop playing that character, the foundation of those relationships instantly destabilizes, exposing whether they were built on mutual respect or merely mutual convenience. The psychoanalyst Otto Rank observed that true self-creation demands the loss of who we pretended to be, a process that inevitably triggers profound grief and interpersonal rupture. When you begin integrating your shadow, you can no longer tolerate relationships that require your self-suppression to survive. The quiet tolerance you once held for subtle disrespect, emotional manipulation, or one-sided dynamics evaporates. You begin to notice that many of your connections were not rooted in who you actually were, but in how useful. Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The trauma of being, for more content like this, or harmless, you made yourself to others. This realization brings a distinct and heavy sense of loss, as the people you once felt closest to suddenly feel like strangers. As your inner boundaries firm up, the dynamic shifts. Those who profited from your lack of limits will view your newfound honesty not as growth, but as betrayal. They may accuse you of changing, becoming distant or acting cold, failing to understand that you haven't become cruel. You have simply stopped sacrificing your truth to keep their peace. The silence that grows between you and old friends is not an accident. It is the natural consequence of outgrowing a shared illusion. In the early stages of shadow integration, this relational decay feels like an agonizing isolation. You watch your phone get quieter, and social invitations dwindle, and a primitive fear of abandonment rises from deep within your unconscious. It is tempting in these moments to put the mask back on, to apologize for stepping out of line, and to slip back into the familiar comfort of pleasing others. But your shadow, once awakened, will not allow you to shrink back into a life that no longer fits, forcing you to endure the discomfort of standing entirely alone. This forced detachment reveals a hard psychological truth. Many of your past bonds were formed through trauma responses rather than genuine affection. You attracted people whose unintegrated shadows matched your own. Those who needed a savior met your need to be needed, and those who dominated met your habit of submissiveness. When you integrate your shadow, you reclaim the suppressed anger and self-respect that once allowed those toxic loops to continue. As a result, the invisible glue holding those unhealthy attachments together simply dissolves. The collapse of these bonds is a necessary clearing of your emotional landscape, making room for connections rooted in reality rather than fiction. A relationship that requires you to abandon your authentic self is not a sanctuary. It is a cage dressed up as companionship. In the quiet space left by fading friendships, you begin to understand the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the painful absence of others, while solitude is the rich, restorative presence of your own true self. As you navigate this period of social contraction, you start to view absence not as a void, but as a form of protection. You no longer feel compelled to chase after people who drift away, nor do you feel the need to argue with those who misinterpret your silence. You accept that some people were only equipped to love a specific version of you, the compliant, quiet version that never made them uncomfortable. Letting them go is an act of deep mercy, both for them and for the person you are becoming. Through this lens, the breakdown of your social world is not a tragedy, but a vital milestone in Carl Jung's process of individuation. To become a whole, undivided individual, you must pass through the fire of social disapproval and prove that your internal integrity matters more than external popularity. The loss of superficial relationships is the price of admission for stepping into your genuine power. You learn to trust that the universe is actively removing what was artificial to make room for what is real. In this newfound clarity, your criteria for human connection undergoes a permanent shift. You lose interest in surface-level charm, impressive credentials, or social status, seeking instead the rare quality of emotional honesty. You become drawn to individuals who have done their own inner work, people who are comfortable with silence, who speak their truth without cruelty, and who do not demand that you wear a mask to be worthy of their presence. When you do begin to build new relationships from this integrated state, the dynamic is fundamentally different. These new bonds are not held together by a desperate need for approval, but by a shared appreciation for authenticity. Because you no longer hide your own shadow, you are not frightened by the imperfections and complexities of others. You offer a grounded, non-judgmental presence that invites people to take off their own masks, creating a depth of intimacy you never experienced when you were busy pleasing the crowd. Looking back on the relational structures that collapsed, you feel a quiet gratitude for their dismantling. What once felt like a devastating personal loss is now revealed as a profound act of psychological liberation. The friends who left were not enemies. They were simply actors in a play you no longer wished to perform in. Their departure was the catalyst that forced you to rely on your own internal compass rather than the shifting opinions of those around you. Ultimately, surviving the collapse of relationships based on the false self teaches you that true belonging never requires self-betrayal. You realize that it is far better to sit alone in the truth of who you are. Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. Than to be surrounded by hundreds of people who only love your shadowless illusion. By honoring the loss and standing firm in your solitude, you reclaim your life. You step forward into the world unburdened, ready to be seen, known, and loved for exactly who you truly are. The third sign that your need for solitude reflects deep shadow integration is entering the interior labyrinth and directly confronting the emotional realities you spent a lifetime avoiding. In a world obsessed with constant distraction and digital noise, stepping away into complete quiet removes the psychological armor that once protected you from yourself. When external chatter stops, the internal volume turns up dramatically, exposing you to the raw, unedited landscape of your own mind. This stage is uncomfortable and often disorienting, as the feelings you buried to remain functional begin rising to the surface of your conscious awareness. For years, your persona allowed you to run away from painful truths by keeping your attention directed outward toward work, social obligations, and constant activity. The moment you choose solitude, that grand distraction mechanism collapses, leaving you alone with your unintegrated anger, envy, grief, and shame. Rather than running back into the comfort of shallow entertainment or social busyness, integration requires you to sit quietly with these heavy emotions. You begin to realize that the dark room inside your psyche is not a place of evil, but a repository for suppressed parts of your life force waiting to be understood and reclaimed. Carl Jung observed that the shadow contains not just dark impulses, but the very vitality and creativity needed to make a human being whole. When you face your suppressed anger in the quiet of solitude, you discover that beneath its destructive potential lies the boundary-setting power you lacked for decades. When you examine your hidden envy, you realize it is merely an unacknowledged map pointing directly toward your unfulfilled potential and true desires. Sitting with these parts of yourself without judgment allows their toxic energy to dissipate, transforming them from unpredictable unconscious monsters into conscious psychological strength. This phase of shadow integration requires an extraordinary level of radical self-honesty that cannot be cultivated in a crowd. Away from the opinions of others, you are forced to stop blaming your parents, ex-partners, or society for your current psychological state. You begin to trace your recurring life patterns back to their original source, your own choices, insecurities, and suppressed wounds. Admitting your own capacity for selfishness, manipulation, or cowardice is a deeply humbling experience. Yet this brutal clarity is the precise moment real emotional maturity is born. As you navigate this inner wilderness, your relationship with solitude fundamentally shifts from passive isolation to active psychological work. You no longer use your alone time to idly daydream or wallow in self-pity, but to observe your thoughts with the calm precision of an objective witness. You notice how quickly your mind tries to manufacture drama to escape the present moment, and you learn to let those thoughts pass without identifying with them. Through this quiet discipline, the chaotic labyrinth of your mind slowly transforms into a structured, peaceful inner sanctuary. Surviving the journey through your own dark room rewards you with a profound and unshakable sense of inner peace. Having faced the worst aspects of your own nature in the safety of solitude, you lose your fear of what others might think or say about you. You emerge from the silence no longer terrified of your own complexity, but anchored in a quiet, complete acceptance of your whole self. By courageously exploring the depths of your inner labyrinth, you turn the pain of isolation into the ultimate victory of individuation. The fourth sign that your solitude marks shadow integration is the complete dismantling of your need for universal approval. In the early stages of life, the desire to be liked by everyone is an instinctual survival mechanism. Your persona was carefully constructed to win praise, avoid conflict, and secure a safe place within the collective group. However, As your shadow begins to merge with your conscious mind, you suffer a profound realization. Trying to be loved by everyone requires you to be fundamentally dishonest with almost everyone. When you step into the quiet sanctuary of solitude, the constant craving for external validation begins to starve. Without an audience to applaud your performances, you are forced to ask a terrifying yet liberating question. If no one were watching, who would I actually be? In the absence of immediate feedback, likes, or... Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method. 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. Reassuring nods, you begin to anchor your self-worth internally. You discover that the urge to please everyone was never an act of kindness, but a desperate form of control designed to protect your fragile sense of safety. Carl Jung emphasized that true freedom begins the moment you accept that you cannot be whole while remaining universally popular. Integrating the shadow means acknowledging that you possess traits, opinions, and boundaries that will inevitably make certain people uncomfortable. In solitude, you make peace with being misunderstood, disliked, or mischaracterized by those who only knew your mask. You realize that losing the approval of people who demand your self-betrayal is not a loss at all, but a massive recovery of your personal energy. As this internal shift takes hold, your fear of social rejection transforms into a quiet, unshakable indifference to judgment. When someone criticizes your path, projects their insecurities onto you, or expresses disappointment in your boundaries, you no longer feel a desperate urge to defend yourself or change their mind. Having already faced your own dark room, their harsh words cannot reveal anything about you that you haven't already seen, accepted, and integrated in the dark. This liberation from public opinion completely reshapes how you present yourself to the world when you do leave your solitude. You speak your truth plainly without diluting it to keep the peace, and you say no without offering elaborate apologetic excuses. You stop molding your personality to fit the expectations of every room you enter, choosing instead to present a single, consistent, and authentic self. You lose interest in winning arguments or seeking approval, finding immense power in letting others be wrong about you. Ultimately, relinquishing the need to be loved by all is the moment you transition from an anxious performer into a fully sovereign individual. The energy you once wasted begging for validation from strangers is redirected toward your own creative work, deep self-respect, and true purpose. Solitude ceases to be a hiding place from judgment and becomes the fortress where your authentic self resides. You step back into society not to fit in, but to exist, grounded, undisturbed, and finally whole. The fifth sign that your solitude reflects deep shadow integration is a dramatic increase in your internal space, giving you the ability to respond to life rather than instantly react to it. Before integrating your shadow, every minor insult, unexpected setback, or perceived rejection triggers an immediate defensive outburst. This happens because unintegrated parts of your psyche act like exposed nerves. When the outside world touches an unhealed wound, your persona panics and your unconscious mind takes the steering wheel to protect you. In the quiet container of solitude, you begin to observe the mechanics of your own emotional triggers without being consumed by them. Away from the pressure of immediate social encounters, you learn to sit in the space between a stimulus and your reaction. You notice the precise moment anger, defensiveness, or insecurity rises in your body. But instead of letting it dictate your behavior, you simply watch it pass like a storm cloud. This practice of calm observation dismantles the automatic control your unconscious mind once held over your life. Carl Jung noted that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When you integrate your shadow, you reclaim the raw, aggressive energy that used to fuel your wild emotional swings and convert it into calm, deliberate strength. You realize that true power is not about controlling other people or dominating every situation, but about maintaining absolute mastery over your own internal state. In solitude, your mind transforms from a chaotic battleground into a controlled, peaceful sanctuary. This newly acquired emotional stillness fundamentally changes how you navigate conflict when you step back into the world. When someone attempts to provoke you, push your buttons, or draw you into unnecessary drama, they are met with a quiet, impenetrable presence rather than an explosive argument. You stop taking other people's projections personally, recognizing that their outbursts are merely a reflection of their own unintegrated shadows. Your silence becomes a powerful boundary, forcing others to face their own behavior rather than hiding behind a back-and-forth fight with you. Ultimately, mastering the pause between stimulus and response allows you to channel your energy toward purposeful action rather than wasted emotion. You no longer burn through your vital force fixing temporary moods or defending a fragile ego. The quiet discipline, forged in your private solitude, becomes your permanent shield in everyday life, allowing you to move through chaos with complete composure, clear intention, and unshakable self-control. The sixth sign that your need for solitude reflects shadow integration is the total transformation of isolation from a painful void into a rich, permanent state of wholeness. In the past, being alone felt like a punishment, a heavy, anxious emptiness that you scrambled to fill with constant noise, superficial relationships, or digital distractions. But as your shadow merges with your conscious self, solitude ceases to be an absence of others and becomes the quiet, grounding presence of your true identity. You no longer seek quiet to escape the world, but to return to yourself. When you integrate the parts of yourself you once disowned, you stop treating your own mind as an enemy territory. You no longer need external validation to feel complete, nor do you rely on a crowd to distract you from your inner thoughts. In this sacred solitude, you build an internal sanctuary where your creative energy, intuition, and self-respect can flourish undisturbed. You become your own anchor, a sovereign individual who can enjoy the company of others without ever needing them to fill an internal void. Conclusion. Stepping away from the crowd to face the darkness within is not a path for the faint of heart. It requires immense courage to break free from the safety of social conformity, strip away the false self, and endure the pain of losing who you once pretended to be. Yet, as Carl Jung's work reveals, this journey through the quiet depths of your psyche is the only true doorway to individuation. The collapse of your masks, the fading of superficial bonds, and the quiet mastery of your emotions are not signs of a life falling apart, but of a soul finally coming together. When you honor your need for solitude, you give yourself the rare gift of total psychological integration. You emerge from the silence not as an isolated outcast, but as a grounded, authentic being who no longer needs permission from the world to exist. The journey through the shadow does not destroy you. It strips away everything that was fake, leaving behind an unshakable inner strength. In the end, you discover that the quiet you sought was never a retreat from life. It was the moment you finally awoke to yourself.